Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Alejandra Horvath and today I'm going to show you how I use Power Query to reconcile PDF files with Excel files. I'm going to use a bank reconciliation as an example. I received several requests on this topic, so I'm hoping that the techniques that I'm going to show you here today can be helpful, not just for bank reconciliations, but for other queries as well. The working files are going to be available on the description of this tutorial, so you can follow along and practice. If you find this information useful, please give a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Also, share with anybody that you believe can benefit from it. Thank you so much for watching, and let's start because we have a lot to learn today. Let me start showing you what the goal is with this class, is to learn how to get to this point. I'm going to start with two sets of files. One is from PDF from the bank, and the one from my company or our books will come from Excel files. And here I created a query that got to this point where I have the difference between both. And here the items are only in our books. I have the differences in January, which are deposits, so I can identify it, I can investigate and see why the bank doesn't have this deposit. And it can be also that the deposits were returned, so that could be the reason why we still have them as deposit, the bank doesn't. So that could be that we're missing an entry, or it could be that the bank has an issue, so we can investigate and get some clarification on these items. So in February, I have a difference in checks, which makes total sense when we issue a check. The vendor, the employee, whoever we pay that check to, doesn't cash that right away. And for that reason, we will always have, or we will have some checks in reconciliation for timing issues. So, but it's also worth to take a look. That is exactly the reason why, or there is not a double entry that we did for that check in our books, right? Here the same check deposits, and I can see that April has only 11,500, but if I expand the information here, I can see that I have a lot of information that is not much, and that is because we don't have the bank statement for April yet. So everything is here for our books. As soon as I have the file for April, I can just copy and paste that inside of my folder bank, and this information will be reconciled, and we will get only the differences here. So let me expand this. This is the part that is coming from the bank. These are the items that are in the bank statement, but not in our books. There is a cash management fee here and in March as well. So that makes sense. We missed that. We missed to enter that information in our books. But now I can see some checks here. So keep in mind that the files that we're going to work with is only from January to March to start with. So we won't have information from the past. These checks must be on the bank reconciliation from last year, and they were cashed just in January. For that reason, I don't have it in my books at this point of time because I'm just reconciling the information that I have in my books from January to March. See, yeah, okay, so we're going to start from January to March, and later on we will add information for April to June, so you can see how fast and how easy it is just to process the bank reconciliations once the query is created. So these are all the items. Look, here we have a return deposit. This is probably from last year. So we have deposits here that were not matched and so on and so forth. So we need to see what is happening with these items. And as I said, we haven't received the statement for April. For that reason, our reconciliation from the bank statements ends in March. And over here, I'm going to show you, we have the transactions that are in both files, the PDF and the Excel files, but they have a difference. So we need to identify or to investigate why we have differences on these items. Sometimes we put the number without the minus or with a minus, or we have a higher amount or is a typo. So this difference might come from there, but we need to investigate. Okay. So this is the goal with the class. Let's open a blank workbook to start from scratch. And let me show you the files. Right here on the desktop, I have a folder that is called demo. I have additional information for the bank and for the company, but the folder I'm going to work with is the bank and the company. So I'm going to open the bank folder first, double click there, and I'm going to select the 3 files that I have there. I'm going to press enter so you can see the content. And here we have date, reference amount, February, same thing, and March. Perfect. Now I'm going to close this. Let me show you the files from the company. I'm going to open the folder company, select the 3 files that I have here. We're going to start from January to March in both sides. Of course, in the example, I show you only up to March in the bank and April with the company, but we're starting from scratch. So let's start with the same months and then we go from there. These files have the date, amount, enter by, and this enter by is the employee number who entered this information, which batch this entry had, the reference, the description. This is January, I'm gonna close it. I have March, same thing right here. I'm gonna close it. And February, same thing. Also, I'm gonna close it. From here on my blank workbook, I'm gonna go data, get data, from file, from folders. Let's start. It's so exciting. I always love to do this type of queries. So let's go to bank. I'm going to say, okay, let's start with the PDF file. Here is the content of that file, Control C plus to zoom in. So you can see I have January, February, and March. And I cannot combine yet, I cannot load, I need to transform first, and then I will combine later. So it will be part of my query, part of my process of my query, Control C plus to zoom in. And I can see what I just showed you, that preview, all the content of this folder. Even I had at the end the folder path and when this file was created, modified, accessed, etc. I just want to keep the column content. I don't need the name. I don't need anything else. I just need the content. Remember, for good practices, we need to filter this information. If I have this column extension, uh, I want to make sure that I'm going to bring only the PDF files. And also when I have here on my column name, I want to bring only the files that are closed. I don't want to bring open files. And how do I identify open files? Well, those files will have a wave, a tilt, right? So kind of wave in front of the name. It will have that and the dollar sign. And then the name of the file. If you don't filter that information to prevent errors, what Power Query does recognizes that as a different file, and it brings the file that is closed and the file that is open. It brings that information, so you will have duplicated info. For that reason, it's good to have good practices. I'm just going to do it in here with the bank statements. To save time, I won't do it with the files from Excel, but just make sure that you follow these steps as well with the Excel files. Here, I can just click the row and I want to say text filter does not begin with, and it does not begin with that wave, with that tilt. And here does not begin with, I'm going to provide that. It's just right beside your number 1 on your alphanumeric keyboard. And I want to select that here from the name column, but I also want to use this step to select the items from the column extension. So instead of basic, I'm going to click at advanced. And now I have name, does not begin with that tilt right over here. And I'm going to try to zoom in, but it cuts a little bit. So you can see that tilt right over here. So Control Shift minus to zoom out. And now I'm selecting one column. Now here I'm going to indicate that I also want that the column extension equals PDF. So for sure, I will always bring the PDF files only. And why is this? If I go here, I said equal PDF. The extension has dot PDF. I can say equals or contains. Instead of equals, I'm going to say contains PDF. I'm going to say OK. And now you can see that it recognizes, okay, it has PDF. Perfect. I'm going to bring you the PDF. But what happens, I'm going to do it here. I'm going to do the code in here. I'm going to overwrite that PDF and I'm going to provide PDF in capital letters. If I press enter, it's not going to bring me anything because Power Query is case sensitive. And if I don't provide the PDF in lowercase, it's not going to bring me anything. This function text contains has an optional parameter at the end after the PDF, the quotation marks. I'm going to say ignore here. Compare ordinal ignore case. That is going to ignore if it's capital or lowercase. And look, now I left this as a uppercase, but it recognized the PDF regardless of if it's uppercase or lowercase because of this optional parameter, compare ordinal ignore case. So here I'm going to just remove the space between the filter rows. And I just like to keep my code clean or as clean as possible. And remember to rename your steps because every time that you need to go back to your query and you're looking for something, if you don't rename your steps, you're going to be just struggling. So I tell you because it has happened to me a few times. So let's create a new step. But before I create the new step, I just want to keep the column content. I don't want to keep anything else. The less information that I have, the better for me because it helps me to focus on the column or columns that I need. So here, the end of this function, where do we have the closing parentheses? I'm going to say Shift Enter. So I can put this one here at the bottom. And I'm going to press Control closing square bracket just to indent a little bit. And I'm going to provide a double set of square brackets. And I'm going to say the column content. This is called projection. Inside of the first set of square brackets, I'm providing the name of the columns that I want to keep. And in this case, I want to keep the column content. If I go here, if I want to keep the column name as well or any other column, I just provide that. In one set of square brackets, I provide the first name of that column, comma. Then in another set of square brackets, I provide the name of the other column and so on and so forth. And then there will be one set of square brackets that it is having all those square brackets inside, right? So this square bracket here and this square bracket here will be the ones covering that or having the column names inside. So if I press enter, I can keep only these two columns. In my case, I don't want to keep this column. I just want to keep the column content. I don't need anything else. That's perfect. So let me collapse this. And now my next step is to bring this information as PDF. Right now it's as binary. I don't need it as binary. So let's create a new step. I'm going to click here at FX. If you don't have the formula bar visible, go to view and just click at this square where it says formula bar. So you can have that check mark right there. Now here on my formula bar, I just created a new step. That's why I click at FX. And after the equal, I say table transform columns. Table transform columns right here. Open parentheses, and it's asking me for a table. The table is coming from my previous step, filter rows, comma. What is the transformation that I want to have in this column? I need to provide that as a list, and to tell Power Query that this is a list, I need to provide the curly brackets. And I need to provide also the name of the column that I want to transform. In my case, I only have one column, but anyways, I need to provide that. And I'm going to say, what do I want to process there? In that column, I need to provide the keyword each. That means that this is a function. This is a keyword for a function. So please process the following. I need to bring the PDF tables. Open parentheses. And I need to provide the PDF as binary. Perfect. That is what I have here. Binary. Oh, I click there and of course it gave me an error because I'm not done. So I'm going to go inside of the parentheses where it says PDF tables, provide the underscore. That means that PowerPoint is going to look into every single line of that column and it's going to bring the PDF tables. Then go to the end, close parentheses, enter. It doesn't say binary anymore, it says table. If I go and take a peek here, I can see the content of that PDF file that is a sheet or a table. Every single file has one sheet, one table. Every time that I have information like this, I try to bring the tables as much as possible. More often than not, the tables are in one piece. Let's say I have only one table, right? So it depends on the files, but let's say even if I have several pages, when I bring the table will have all the content of all those pages in one table. As I said, more often than not, because there will be exceptions, but in my experience, it has been better to bring the tables. If you bring the pages, you will bring as many pages as the document has, and sometimes could be quite a bit. So in our example, the tables are coming just in one piece. That works perfectly. I know in real life, sometimes the tables can be very messy, so just keep that in mind. In our example, we have the tables that have all the information and all the information that we need. So I'm going to bring the tables. Also keep in mind that you are bringing pages. Your pages may have a page number or a note at the bottom of the page. So that will come as well if you bring the pages, right? So in our case, let's bring the tables. So now, but I want to filter this information before I expand these tables because I can do it here. I'm gonna expand this, my formula bar, and after the each, I'm gonna press Shift Enter. I'm gonna provide a let. Let's work with a nested let. I'm gonna press Shift Enter as well. I'm gonna provide the name of this variable. Let's say I'm gonna provide this as X. After the pivot table closing parentheses, I'm going to provide a comma. That means that I'm going to provide another variable. And I'm going to say that is going to be y. This is going to be equal to table select rows. Table select rows. Open parentheses, the table is coming from my previous step. In this case, will be my previous variable, which is x, which is the table that I were seeing here, the nested tables. That's the result of my variable x, comma. What is the condition? Well, I'm going to ask Power Query to look inside of every single nested table and look into the column kind. You can see the column kind right over here, and it has page or table. I want that the item that is inside of that column equals table. I'm going to say equal table. I'll go to the end. That's all that I want to do here. I don't want to have another variable. That's all with the variables. I want to close my expression let. With the expression let, I open, let's say, those calculations. And with the expression in, I close those calculations. And what is coming after the in will be the result. I want the result to be the value of my variable y. I'm going to press enter. If I click here beside table, I can see that the pages are gone. I keep only the tables. That's all that I wanted to do there. I'm going to collapse this part here. And let me expand the column content. Let me click at these rows that are facing opposite sides. And I want to bring only the column data. That's the one that has the tables from the PDF files. I make sure that you don't bring the original name as prefix. I don't have a check mark here, which is correct. I'm gonna check only the column data, say okay. And here we have the content of our table. That is fantastic. Let me just remove space between expanded content. And that reminds me that I didn't rename my step custom one. That's the one where we have the table transform column content. Perfect. Let's see. Now, let's go back to expanded content, and we can see that we have the first line with the column names. We need to promote that line as headers. Otherwise, when we combine our tables, that information will be part of our tables, and we don't want that. We want that to be the headers. That's it. I'm going to promote headers on the nested table. So I'm going to go to formula bar, fx, after the equal, table transform columns, open parentheses, to the table that is coming from my previous step, the expanded content, which is the table that I'm seeing here with one column data. And in there, I need to provide the transformation as list, curly brackets, remember, and the name of the column that I want to transform, data, comma, which transformation I want to process there, the word each, keyword for a function, and I want to promote headers, right? Yeah, right here, perfect. Open parentheses, and I need the tables. The tables are going to come from every single line on the column data. For that reason, I provide the underscore that indicates to Power Query to look at every single line of that column. I'm going to go to the end, close parentheses, enter, and see what happens. The magic. Now the column names are properly identified, are properly promoted. And look, this is our code. We transform the column data and we promoted the headers. Here I'm going to rename the step now that I'm here. And I'm ready to expand. I'm so excited. I'm ready to expand this. I'm more than expand, to combine these tables. So there are a few ways how we can do this. One of them is by clicking at the arrows on the top of the column, and let's say, okay, but I don't like this technique because I have the categories names. And I don't like that because if something changes later on, for any reason, the name of these columns change, have one more space, or comes a capital and lowercase where it shouldn't, or completely different names, my query can break. So I like to do it as dynamic as possible. I'm going to delete this step. I click at the X on the side of the step name. And here I'm going to create a new step. Fx, I'm going to say equal, table combine. This is my favorite way to combine tables. Open parentheses, the tables as list. So right now I have a column from a table that is called data, right? I want to bring this as a list. So projection. Double set of square brackets will bring or will keep the columns that I indicate inside of those square brackets. Here, if I want that this column comes as a list, I can provide one set of square brackets, data, close parentheses at the end, enter. And now I have all my tables combined in one big table, right? We're making progress, we're getting there. I'm super excited for what is coming next. So far, we have been able to get all the PDF files combined into one big table. The only thing that I missed there is to change the data type here on the column amount. You can see ABC stands for text, and this is not text, it's number. So let's change that to decimal number. Perfect. I don't have any error on the top of the column. I don't have any red anywhere. And here I can see error 0%. That means that all the information on this column is a number. So if you have an error when you are converting or you are changing the data type on one column, that is because you may have some item that is not a number. In the error here, the percentage, you will have a percentage there, a number there. In our case, we don't have it, so we can keep going. The next step is very important because the bank has certain code for EFTs or for wires. 3049 is the code for EFTs and 4015 is the code for wire. In our books, we have this information as wire 002 or EFT 132, 133, 134, and so on and so forth. So the bank has that code, then the number of the transaction, and then the last digits are the amount of the transaction without the decimals. I know that because I work with those bank statements for a long time, right? So let's fix that to make it comparable with our books so we can match that information properly. I want to create a new column. Let me just change the name of my last step, change type, and the step before was table combined. Saying that, now I go to my last step and I can create my new step. Click at the text to create a new step. And I'm gonna say equal. And I can do this also through the add column tab, or if I do it through there, the box where I need to type the code is very small, so I prefer to show you here. You can, I feel like I can show you better. Here is a little bit bigger. So, and I like to write code. So, table add column and open parentheses. And it's asking me for a table where, in which table you want to add this column. Well, that's gonna be the one that is coming from the previous step, which is the one that I'm seeing here. Comma. What is the name of the table? I'm gonna say this is gonna be band reference. Comma. What do I want to process inside of that new column? What do I want to do there? So I say each, the keyword for a function, please process the following. And that's going to be, I want you to identify if the text on the column reference start with 3040 or 4050, do something. We are going to tell Power Query that. So here I'm going to say shift enter. I'm going to say if reference, if whatever is in reference, actually I'm going to say if text start with, if text start with, open parentheses, I need to provide the text. The text is coming from my column reference, comma, what is that thing that this text needs to contain, and is 3049. Or, let me copy all of these, Control C, Control V, and that's going to be or 4015. Now shift enter to go to the next line. And then you are going to extract the middle of that text. So say text middle here, open parentheses. What is the text that I'm looking for? Well, you're going to bring me the text that is coming from the column reference, comma. What is the start as a number? So I have 4 digits. 3049 is 4 digits. So I'm going to say 4, comma. And what is the count? I need to extract 6 digits. And I'm going to say else reference. So let's see what happened. Okay. Close parentheses, enter. Or check mark. And it seems like I'm missing something. And oh, right here, I didn't close the to start with. Or here, I didn't close those parentheses. And enter. Let's see, I have back reference, and here is bringing check 014, 017, great. And here start with 3049 and is bringing only the 6 digits, or this one over here. So here I have 3049, 6 digits, and then later on I have 001243. I'm bringing the 6 digits in the middle. That's exactly what I needed. Now I need to find a way to remove the 3 zeros in front of the amount. So we're gonna modify this a little bit. And I want to do it here because it's easier for me to show you every single step. It would be better to do it in the advanced editor, but every time that I do something here on the formula bar, you can see the change happening on the table just right away, right? Right here, after the H where it says table at column, let's work with another let, nested let. Shift enter. So when I say let, shift enter again, and this is gonna be, let's say now it's gonna be M equals, and that is the name of my variable. The value of that variable is the result of my if, which is this column, whatever is inside of this column. And after I shift enter here, I'm going to provide the comma. That means that there is another variable after that will be variable n. That's going to be equal. And what I want to do there, I want to remove the zeros in front of the numbers that I have here. And I'm going to use the text trim start. Text trim start. open parenthesis, what is the text? The text is coming from my previous variable, which is M, comma, which is the text that I'm having in that bank reference column. And what I want to trim from that is in quotation marks, the zero. I want to get rid of those zeros. That's all. I don't have any more variables. I'm going to provide the expression in to close that let. And I want to bring the value as a result in the value of my variable n. I go to the end, enter. Oh, like magic, you see? Here I have those numbers without the zeros in front of them. That is exactly what I want because now I can combine this text with the letters EFT or with the word wire. In this case, all of these ones that start with 49 are EFTs, and the ones that start with 4015, these are wires. So far so good. Let's do that. That's going to be very quickly, very easy. Now that I have the nested let here, I'm going to add one more variable. Or actually, well, yes, let me add another variable. At the end of the closing parenthesis on the variable n, I'm going to provide a comma to say there is a variable coming. I'm going to say variable of, that's going to be equal to, and I'm going to say if, again, text start with, and actually, let me copy that from the top because I'm going to use it again because I will need to identify that information first. Go to see, and I'm going to go here to my variable O. I'm going to say if text start with 3049, then we're going to have EFT space. And I'm going to concatenate that. I'm going to provide the ampersand. And I want that to combine that information with the text that I have right now on the bank reference column, which is the result of my variable n. Else, if that's not the case, if the text starts with 4015, I just provide Control V because I already have that, I already copied that. And I said then wire space, make sure that you spell that correctly, just as we do it in our books. And then we say, and concatenate that with the value from my variable n. And here I'm going to say else, whatever the result is from my variable n, whatever is there, check 01, deposit, etc. I'm going to change the result. The result will be the value of my variable O. I'm going to press the check mark, and it didn't like something. Oh, it's because I have double if here. Sorry about that. Enter. Now let's see what happened. You see, EFTs for everything that starts with 3049, wire for everything that starts for 4015. Where can I see that? EFTs again, wire is working perfectly. We are ready for the next step. I'm very happy because now we're going to start with the company files. Now we're ready to bring the files from our books, which are the Excel files. Here on the left, where I have my queries, I'm going to right-click in any of the white space here, new query, file, folder. We're going to bring the folder from the company. So I'm going to select the company folder. Remember, I'm on the desktop, folder demo, folder company. Double click there, and I'm going to say OK or open. Open. So Control C plus to zoom in, and now I can see the content of that folder, which is the Excel files, January, February, and March. Again, I cannot combine and transform. I can only transform because I need to do some work before I can combine the files. Let's say transform. And here we have the folder or the content of that folder, again, with more information that we really need. I don't need anything else than the files that are coming from my column content. So here on the formula bar, again, I'm going to do a projection, which means I'm going to bring only a column from this table. I can bring more columns, but in my case, I have only one column that I want to bring. For the reason I can provide one set of square brackets inside of another set of square brackets. If I had more columns that I wanted to bring, then I have the one set of square brackets per column. And then that's going to be inside of the other set of square brackets. So here is content. Let's say if I wanted to bring name, so I say comma, I open another set of square brackets and I would say name, right? And I press enter and I can keep both columns. In my case, I don't need the column name. I just wanted to show you what happens if I do that or how I call more columns. So here I just want the content, I delete name and I keep two sets of square brackets. Remember that if I provide only one set of square brackets and the name of the column, that column will come as a list. So I want to work with the table, right? And with this column from the table. So same thing, I have this information as binary. I don't want it as binary. I want it as tables. So I'm going to create a new step here on the formula bar, click at Fx after the equal, one more time, table transform columns, open parentheses, the table is coming from my previous step, which is the source, which is the table that we're seeing here with one column only, comma, the transformation operation as a list. I need to provide the name of the column right inside of the quotation marks, comma, what do I want to process there? I'm going to say each, and I want to bring the Excel workbook. Open parentheses, underscore, I go to the end, close parentheses, enter. At this point, I cannot see the content of those tables. I can just see the content of those files. And by saying that is the sheets or tables that this file have. In this case, I can see that I have sheets only. I don't have any table. I only have the information as sheets. And Power Query will convert that into tables. But as it's coming from Excel, it's only a sheet. Well, that's okay, but I cannot see the content of those tables yet. So I need to go here at the right corner on the top. I'm going to click at those two arrows that are facing opposite side. I don't want to use the original column name as a prefix, and I just want to bring the column data. I'm going to say, okay, now I can see the content. And I have the same thing that I had with the PDF files. The first line of each table is the name of those columns. So when we're working with the Excel workbook function, that function has an optional parameter where I can indicate Power Query to promote the headers right in that function. So I'm going to go back to my custom one step here where I provided the Excel workbook. After the underscore, telling Power Query to look into every single line, I'm going to say comma, and I'm going to say true. So that is this optional parameter that it says use headers as any. And I'm going to say true. I say, yes, please do that. And I realize that I rename my step here. So I'm going to say this is going to be transform content. And the next one, the expanded content, I'm just going to remove the space between the two words. Perfectly. The code will look cleaner, let's say. So now that I have this information, I can see the content of my tables. It has the proper headers. I don't have to do an extra step to do that. Unfortunately, the PDF function doesn't have that. It's only the Excel workbook function that has that additional parameter that saves us from one step. So perfect. Now I can combine. Remember how do we combine? So I'm going to click at Fx equal table combine right here. Open parentheses, and I need to provide this as a list, one set of square brackets, the name of the column data, close parentheses at the end, enter. Now I have all information combined. Let me hide here where I have my queries. I'm going to hide that so we have more room that we can see this information. So we have the date, the amount, who entered this, which employee entered this, have the employee ID, have the batch, I have the reference, the description. So in here, really what I need is only the date. I'm going to select that. So it's only the date, the amount, and the reference. I can select, well, I can do a few things here. I can select the column date, press and hold the control key, select amount and select reference. I can right click and remove other columns. If I do that, I'm going to create another step. I can also select the columns that I want to delete and just press delete or remove columns. But if I don't want to create an extra step, what I can do here on the formula bar, I can do another projection and I can indicate the columns that I want to keep. Now, I want to also organize or rearrange the columns that I want to keep. For that reason, I'm going to do a projection here. And after the closing parentheses, I'm going to provide the double square brackets. And I want to keep date. That's the first column that I want to keep. I also want to keep the column reference inside another set of square brackets. And I'm going to open another one for the column amount. By doing this, I'm telling Power Query not only to keep these three columns, but also which order these columns should have. I'm going to go to the end of the closing square bracket and I'm going to press enter. And now you can see that the columns are in the order that I indicated just right here. So that's why I like to do these projections. I know it's a lot of typing sometimes, but honestly, I find it very useful. I really like how it looks. I have less steps. It's clear for me what I was doing in every single step. So I really, really enjoy working in this way. So let me just rename my step. And that was combine, table combine. And now we have all the tables from our books. So far, we have been able to combine all the PDF files into one big table, all the Excel files into another big table. Now it's time to merge both and then get the discrepancies or the differences between the two, and then get our items for our bank reconciliation. You can see that the process to create the query takes quite a bit of time, but the best part is that all this time is so worth it to invest on preparing the query, because next time that you have the bank statement in PDF file or you have your file from your books in Excel, you copy those files into the proper folder and then you just refresh your pivot table like magic. Your bank reconciliation is done in a second. So let's keep going, okay? Let's combine the bank and the company query. I want to create a new query for that combination or to merge these two queries. So I can go home and on the top I can find merge queries and I can select merge query as new. Here on the combine section, that's where you can find it. And because I'm in the company query, this is the first one that I can see here. The next query that I want to combine with is bank. I only have two queries, right? But if you had more, you could see the list here. How do I want to connect these two? What is going to be that column that is going to have the information that needs to match so I can identify the items that don't match, right? So I'm going to go to reference here on the company. And then I'm going to go here. Oh, you know what? Before we go there, I just realized that with the bank, I still have the old reference and the bank reference. Let's get rid of the reference because it's the one that has this 3049 or the 4015. I want to keep only the column with the EFT or the wire, etc. And also, I just realized that the name of the columns is exactly the same than the company. So I want to have something that differentiates the columns that are coming from the bank from the columns that are coming from our books. So I'm going to cancel this. I'm going to go to the bank query. And here, this is the only column that I want to keep. I don't want to keep the reference. In this case, it's going to be easier just to delete this column. And I think that's what I'm going to do, because otherwise, if I'm going to make a projection, I need to type the name of every single column. And I don't want to do that. It's easier just to select the column that I want to delete and delete it. Excellent. The next thing that I want to do, I want to rename the column date. I'm going to add bank in front of date. And I'm going to do the same with amount. Now I have my columns well identified for the bank, and the ones that don't say anything else than date, reference, and amount, those ones are coming from our books. You can also rename these ones and add our books on the name of the columns. But for me, just knowing the ones from the bank, that is good enough. So I can make a difference between the bank and our books. Now let's go back home, merge queries as new. And now because I am on the bank query, is the first one that I can see, I can change this. If I don't want that to be the first one, that's the one that is going to stay on the left, then I can change for company, no problem. So the next query that I need to select will be bank. And now I'm going to select reference and bank reference. Those are going to be the columns that are going to communicate to each other, right? So that's going to be the way that we are going to connect these two queries or these two big tables. And those are the items that we're going to look for to match. And I'm going to change here the left outer. I'm going to change that for full outer. And that is because I want to bring everything. All the lines from the bank, all the lines from the company. I want to get those items that are not matching, but even if they are matching, I want to make sure that the amounts are the same. Because as we saw at the beginning, there will be items that they match for the reference number, but they don't match on the amount. So for that reason, I'm going to bring everything, and then I work with that in the new query. So I'm going to say, okay. And here I have my new query that is called merge. Let's call it final. And we have a new column that is called bank. That is because it's coming from the query bank. Inside of those tables, we have these three columns. And next thing, we need to expand that column. I'm going to click to the two arrows facing opposite sides. And I'm going to say, okay. Okay, now we have all the information from the bank and our books. And I need to identify those items that I don't have on my books, but they are in the bank, and vice versa. So let me create a column. I'm going to go to add column, create a custom column, or I can create it from scratch here where it says FX. Oh, and that reminds me, let me rename my last step. And I'm just going to remove the space. So the code here, this doesn't have the hashtag and the quotation marks. So here I'm going to say table, add column, open parentheses. What is the name of the new column? That will be reference. Close quotation mark because it's a text, comma. And what do I want to process inside of that column? That will be if, let's say the column date equals null, that means that it's not in our books, right? If it's null, it's not in our books, it's not in the bank. Then I'll say bank statement. Else, it's gonna be else I'm gonna say 1. That means that matches, right? Enter. Oh, and I already exist. What about reference? Oh, the column reference exists. Oh, sorry. So I'm gonna say that this is gonna be, let's say, difference ID. Enter. Okay, I totally forgot that I have two references, but anyhow. Okay, so let's go and see the last column, I mean. And you can see that here I have information, but let's say this row 23, bank statement. That means that this transaction is only in the bank statement, which is this side. That is correct. And let's modify our function here because I want to say, well, if the date is null, then bank statement. Else, it will be if now bank date equals null. That means then that is in our books. Else, 1. That means that is in both the bank statement and our books. I'm going to go to enter. And let's see what happens. I have 1, 1, 1 here. Bank statement, which is correct. Let's go down, 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 down. And here where I have these notes, our books. That is correct. This information is in our books. We're getting there. Next thing that we need to do is to compare the amount from our books with the amount from the bank. Before we start making that comparison, I need to replace these notes here on the column amount. I need to replace that for zero. Otherwise, I'm not going to get the result that I'm looking for. So I can right click here to the column amount, and I'm going to say replace values, and I'm going to replace the zero I'm going to replace the null for zero, and I'm going to say okay. And here I have the code that Power Query created for me. I'm not lazy, efficient, just efficient. Here of course, I replace the values only in column amount. But here I have the opportunity to provide the name of the columns as a list, and that's what I'm going to do. So after amount, say comma, the other column that I want to replace the nulls for zeros is the column bank space amount. I'm going to go to the end, press enter. Now let's see over here, there are no more nulls. And here what I have, here there are no nulls, there are just zeros instead. That is perfect. I'm going to change the name of this step. I'm going to say null. Okay, nulls. I'm getting tired. It has been quite a long query. Well, we're getting there. And honestly, as I said, it takes a long time to prepare this type of queries. But once it's ready, you will see your investment will be well rewarded. It's just fantastic. Okay, so here I added the column, I'm going to say column with difference ID. Perfect. So I go to the last step, and now that I replace those nulls for zeros, I'm going to select the column amount, press and hold control, select the column bank amount, and I'm going to go here to add column, standard, add. This is fantastic. This is the best part. So we start seeing the difference between both amounts. And for example, here I have 2,545. From what I'm seeing over here, let me collapse this part here. And let me go to the left. You can see that this item is in both files, the bank and our books. But the problem is that both amounts are positive. For me, when I pay, this money that is going out of the bank, so it's a negative number, it's going out. I'm losing, I'm losing that money, right? For the bank, when I do a transfer, when I do this EFT, that bank doesn't need to have that money in my bank account anymore. Just pays that from my bank account, right? It's not a liability anymore. That money is paid to the vendor, to the employee, whoever needs to be paid. So it's going out of my bank account and it's going in a positive number. The bank and my books have different signs because for me, having money in the bank is an asset. It's a positive number. For the bank, me having money in the bank, for them, it represents a liability. They are responsible for that money, right? So that's why it's a liability. More than owing that money is a money that doesn't belong to them, belongs to me. But it's with them, right? So for that reason, it's a liability. If something happens, I'm allowed to get my money out of the bank, right? So for them, it's a liability because they need to pay it to me. Well, for that reason, the money that is in my bank account, for them, is a liability, it's a negative number. For me, it's a positive number because it's an asset. So for that reason, they cannot be the same signs. One needs to be negative and the other one needs to be positive. Period, right? So in this specific case, there is an error in the entry that was processed in my books. So I need to fix that. That is one. Then now I have differences here, and that makes total sense. That is because they are in the bank, not in my books. But that's why I have this column that is going to identify those items, where these items belong to the bank, my books, or they are completely matching. But the problem is that I have a difference. To get rid of everything else that is matching, reference, amount, etc. I'm going to go here to my column addition that I just realized that, and when it says inserted addition here, I'm going to go to the formula bar. It's adding a column to the table that is coming from my previous step, which was the table that we had before. The name of the column is addition. Here I'm going to change that, and I'm going to say that is difference. And what PowerPoint is processing inside of the column is the amount from my books plus the bank amount. So if one is positive plus the one that is negative, the result of that will be the difference, right? And is a type number. That's all that I wanted to do there. Enter. And now I have my column called difference. I'm going to go to the top here where I have this arrow, and I'm going to filter because I'm going to remove the zeros. Remove that, click OK. And now here we have our difference. Oh, we're getting so close. Next thing is to get only one column with dates, right? It has date from the books or from the bank. I want one column for the reference as well instead of two, one from our books and from the bank, because the one that is null is going to have information in the other side, right? It's on the back or in our books. So want to get that into one column only. And let's add a column. Fx to create a new step. Oh, let me just remove the space between filtered and rows so you don't see that hashtag and quotation marks here on my custom step. Now look, looks better. Say table, add column, open parentheses, to the table is coming from the previous step. The name of the column will be date final, comma. Let's process the following. So I provide each. I go here, I'm going to say if the column date equals null, then give me back the column bank date, right? Else, bring me the information that is in the column date. That means that the column is not null. So that means that there is a date there, and most likely won't be a date on the bank date column. So you can see that some information came as text and some information came as date, and that is because the bank date has been recognized as text. So that's okay. At the end, we're going to change the data type, so I'm not too worried about that. Next thing is to do the same with the reference column. Let's create another column here on the FX, on the formula bar, click at FX. Now I'm going to expand this so it's easier to see. After the equal, table add column, open parentheses to the table that is coming from my custom one, I didn't rename. And here the name will be reference final, comma, each process the following, and I want to say the same. If the column reference equals null, then bring me the information that is in bank reference. Else, then bring me reference. That means that is not null, then bring me the information that is there. Press enter, and now I have only one column for this. Now I can delete the columns that I don't need. So I'm gonna go here and select date, press and hold the shift key and select bank reference. And that's because all of them are in consecutive order. So one after another. That's why I press shift to select all of them. And I press enter. And now there is one thing that I'm noticing here on the difference ID. I mark or I provided a number one for those items that are in both files, the bank and our books. But I want to give something a little bit more descriptive. So I'm going to go back to that step, add column difference ID. And instead of providing the number one, I'm going to say both. I want to identify that information that is included in both files. And now I go to my last step and look, it looks better. So just to say difference ID, and now I can see both instead of number one. With this column selected, I press Ctrl A, I go to transform, detect data type, and there we go. We have our information ready to go, ready to pass to Excel. So far, we have been able to combine the file from the bank and our books, get the difference between both, and get the columns that we need, and we're ready to pass this to Excel. This is fantastic. It's the last step, and it feels so good. Let's go home, close and load to, and here it's going to ask me how do I want to pass this information, table, pivot chart, or only create connection. I'm going to create connection only because I have several queries and I don't want to bring that as a table on different tabs because that's how my default is. And so I'm going to say, okay, here from the final query, right click, load to, and I'm going to load this into a pivot table. I'm going to load it here on B2. I'm going to say, okay. And of course, the first time always takes a little bit to load, but later on, as you keep using, it gets much better. From here, I'm going to select the date, the difference. Oh, when you select the date, I'm using Microsoft 365. So you will notice that it will give you the date. It's going to give you dates and it's going to give you months. It's going to group like that in automatic. So I'm going to just remove month, remove days, and I just want to keep the dates as they are. Okay. And from there, I want to see difference ID. I want that, let's put this one actually on the filter. And I want to see the reference final just here. And I'm going to move the difference to values. Great. Oh, it looks so good. And now I have all the discrepancies here, right? First of all, let me go and create the different designs. So I go to design, report layout, show in tabular form. So here I have all the information. I have date, reference. Excellent. What I can do, I can keep everything in this pivot table and then start filtering. Let's say for both. These are the discrepancies that I have in both files. Or if I select our books, these are the discrepancies in our books only. But what if I want to have one pivot table per each item? So I'm going to go to pivot table analyze. Something very important when we do this is that I have the filter for the different items that I want to create a pivot table for. So now that I have that filter here, and these are the three items that I want to have the filter for, I'm going to select all. I'm going to go to pivot table analyze, options, and I'm going to say show report filter pages. And I want to do that by the difference ID, which is the filter. I'm going to say okay. And now we have a pivot table per every single item. So our books, both our books and the bank, and for the bank statement only. So I'm going to select, as you can see that every single pivot table, the column A is very small. So I'm going to select bank statement tab, press and hold the shift key and select our books tab. So we can select the three tabs at once. I'm going to expand that column here and expand this other one here. And I think that should be fine. So let's go to any of those and any other tabs to unselect. And I'm going to go here, bank statement. You can see now we have very little space, right? And something that I forgot to do on the source is to change the number format. Let's say here, right click inside of any of these numbers. I'm going to say number format, number, use the thousand separators, no decimals. I'm going to say okay. And now that's how you get your differences per item. Very nice. And you will see what happens when I add more files to my folders. So first, let me change this on the main pivot table. So when you create the other pivot tables, as I show you, you still keep your main pivot table, the one that you use to create the other ones. And I'm gonna create number format, number here, 0. Okay, so let's do that. Let's add more bank statement and reports from our books. We were here on the company demo. I have additional bank info. I have April, May, and June. Control C. I'm gonna go to bank. I can paste that there. Control V to paste. Go back to demo, company, additional company. And then I bring those 3 bank statements, Control C. I go to demo, I go to company, Control V, and I didn't show you this one. So they are selected. So I'm gonna press enter. So you can see how they are. And this all clear, same than the other ones like we saw at the beginning, and the other ones that we start working with. This is June, this is April, and this is May. I put that information inside of those folders. I go data, refresh all. I'm gonna click there. And now you will notice that at the bottom, you have the information per date. Now that I think about it, I should have left the months. I'm gonna grab the months here instead of here the date. So I can group by the month. It will be easier just for our eyes to see. So in June, and I'm gonna remove the total per date. So that looks much better. Okay. So if I want to do that, now that I fix this, you can see that the other pivot tables also have that information, but they don't have the last changes that I did when I added the months, right? So when that happens, I just delete those 3 tabs. I select the 3 tabs, right click and delete. And I'm going to say delete. And now that I have this properly set, here you can see all the items that we have overall. If you want to see, like for each item, where the difference is coming from. So here we are in our filter, right? So we have our 3 items. I'm gonna go to pivot table analyze, options, show report filter pages by the difference ID, okay? And now we have our information ready to go. I can see again that the date column is too small, too narrow. So I'm gonna select the 3 tabs, bank statement, both, and our books. And I'm going to expand that column a little bit, make it a little bit bigger. I'm ready to go, and I'm just going to open this a little bit. Difference ID. Here, Control B. I'm going to select the tab sheet just to unselect the other tabs. And now you can see that we have the information that we needed. Bank statement, both, our books, done in no time. You saw that happening in no time. I hope you enjoyed this class. I hope you find very good use to these techniques. It's a long class, it's a long example, but the techniques that you learned here are going to be very useful, not just for reconciliation, but for other type of queries. Keep in mind that here you have an application to all of those functions, all of those techniques, but at the end, you can apply that when you need it. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you in another class. Bye bye.